These are my 5 nominees for the 5th Annual Yearphone Awards, and that means that one of these is my favorite IEM of 2024. Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan, this is Super Review, and I have reviewed literally hundreds of IEMs. This year alone, I've reviewed 50 or more, and I've heard even more than that. But I think these are the 5 best, or at least these are the 5 that I'm going to remember when I look back at this year in the future. So I've got 5 nominees. One of these is going to be the overall winner, but this really isn't just about me because I've also polled you, the audience, to find out what is the people's choice. And after getting hundreds of votes for the people's choice favorite IEMs of the year, well, we've got those results today as well. So without further ado, we're going to dive to the table and go through the nominees. We're going to go through them in alphabetical order. The order means nothing other than the alphabet. But one of these is, in my opinion, the ultimate IEM of the year, which I will reveal. I will announce my final Yearphone winner at the end. But for now, let's go through the nominees. So my first nominee is going to be under this little bucket here, and it's going to be this guy, the Aful Explorer. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Aful Explorer is a hybrid IEM at around $120, and that actually makes it the most affordable IEM that I've got here on the table today. I know it's not super cheap, but $120 I think is like a good kind of entry-level price range. And why I like the Aful Explorer is that it's kind of like the first advancement, in my opinion, in the entry level with a warm, bassy set. Okay, a lot of people, I like a really neutral set generally, and for me, the Truth Eater Hexa has kind of been my go-to around $100. But for a warm, bassy set, frankly, it's been a while since I heard anything as good as the Aful Explorer, and well, that's why it is one of my nominees. It's just a really nice, relaxed sound signature, very well executed. It's got a nice bass emphasis to it without ruining the rest of the sound signature, and if you're looking for that, that's why I think this thing is good. It's a good nominee, but that's not our only nominee. So we've also got under this bucket is, of course, the Dunu DK3001BD, aka the Brain Dance. This is the newest IEM here on the table. This one came out, I want to say, about a month ago. So this one's pretty fresh, but nonetheless still has been one of the standout IEMs for me of the year. When I look back, I'm certainly going to be remembering this guy. So this is a $500 tribrid set, technically a tribrid. It's got dynamic drivers, it's got balanced armatures, as well as it's got like these newfangled planar tweeters. And the sound signature on this is just kind of exciting. They call it, what do they call it? What is their term? They call it like the hyper signature or something like that. And I think that that's a fair description. Frankly, I think this is kind of like the best spatial effects of any IEM that I've heard this year. It really delivers on what I wanted from some other high-end IEMs earlier in the year, e.g. the Pilgrim. And it's just got really fantastic bass. It's got nice sense of clarity without it being strident at all. And that is why it is one of my nominees for Yearphone of the year. But moving on to our third nominee under this bucket, it's going to be the Hisenior Mega5-EST, aka the Megafest, aka the Phoebos, aka kind of the grandfather of the new meta. So this is a $550 tribrid IEM. So it's a dynamic driver, it's got balanced armatures as well as electrostatic tweeters in there. And that kind of like accidentally kicked off this new meta tuning craze that you've probably heard way too much about, and I'm tired of hearing about it, so I assume you are, but maybe not. But anyway, why accidentally? Because, and I guess shout out to Listener for pointing this out, they tried to go for the Harman target, and they ended up accidentally delivering what would now become kind of like this new meta, more warm, tilted, diffuse field sound signature, and they do it really, really well. One of the best, if not the best, just general tonalities of all the IEMs that came out in the year, and it does it on an analog cable. Really, it's just a fantastic set. The only thing that kind of lets it down is its bass quality, but that's really picking nits. Otherwise, having a perfect tonality, is that enough to make it the best Yearphone of the year? Well, let's move on and talk about the rest of the nominees, because we've got 2 more to get to. Over here, we've got, ready for it? The Moondrop Cross Crinacle Dusk. So this one is not without its controversies. This one came out earlier in the year. This is a hybrid set, actually technically a tribrid as well. It's got double dynamic drivers, it's got balanced armatures, as well as microplanar for the tweeter. and it's coming in at $360. So actually on the low end, but certainly not cheap. But it had a little bit of a controversial launch because this actually launched with a DSP cable, EQ, like it's a digital cable rather than a traditional analog cable. It also came with an analog cable, and for all intents and purposes, as I'm presenting it to you here, as I reviewed it on my channel, I'm treating this as purely an analog IEM. For me, that is how I use the Dusk. That is why it is on the table, because of its analog tuning. Although if you're interested in the digital signal processing tuning, of course it does that as well. But for me, this thing is just frankly fantastic. And it makes up for kind of some disappointment that I had in last year's Moondrop Blessing 3. If you know, I'm a big fan of the Blessing 2. The Blessing 3 for me was like better in some ways, but worse in some ways. And the Dusk kind of just satisfies the problems that I had with the B3 and makes this just really one of my favorite IEMs, easily of the year, possibly one of my favorite IEMs of all time. Fantastic bass, excellent mid-range, strong sense of clarity, and it also fits me really, really well, which frankly goes a long way in terms of how much I'm going to use an IEM. Now, a disclaimer as I bring this one up, I am friendly with Crin, all right? And that might be, you might think that that is going to influence my opinion on this IEM, but just note, I've known Crin for a couple of years. This is the first time I've ever nominated one of his IEMs for Yearphone, so hopefully that assuages those concerns. But if not, let me know in the comments. But of course, that still leaves us for our fifth and final nominee for Yearphone of the Year, and that's going to be this guy, the Tanchjim Origin. So this is another one that came out in the first half of the year, and this is a single dynamic driver set coming in at around $260. And I think this was the best dynamic driver set of 2024. None of these are all hybrids and tribrids. This is the only single dynamic driver set here because it is, in my opinion, again, it's just the best. It gives you that lively, punchy, dynamic driver sound, but it does it, I think, in an improvement versus what Tanchjim has always done. They've always done a really good job. They always have been known for their really nice spatial effects in a dynamic driver, and I think this guy still delivers on that, but it does it in a more neutral, a little bit more mid-range focused way versus something like the previous Oxygen, which was a good IEM in its own right. But this one, I think, really does take it up a notch. And if it hasn't stood out to you yet, like being vocal focused and being able to deliver on a really solid mid-range are kind of my requirements when it comes to being a fantastic IEM. And I think all five of these do this. They all do it slightly differently. This is a little bit on the warmer side, a little bit more bass oriented. This is a little bit on the more exciting side, a little bit more dynamic and just like a little brighter and livelier. The Phoebos is maybe the most, well, this is probably the most relaxed, but this is like the most relaxed while still sounding more neutral normal. We'll just call this one neutral normal. The Dusk is like somewhere maybe in between these two. It's like, it's more toward the brain dance in terms of it being kind of lively and exciting, but it's a little bit more reined back and held back and a little bit more neutral like the Mega5-EST. And then finally, we've got, of course, the Tanchjim Origin, which is just kind of in its own thing. It's doing its own thing because it's a single dynamic driver set. But those are my 5 nominees for Yearphone of the Year. And you might be wondering, which of these 5 is my favorite? Well, I'm not going to tell you yet. Because what we're going to start with is we're going to start with the People's Choice IEMs of the year. I'm going to push these to the side and we're going to go through, like I mentioned, I took a survey of the people on YouTube, on Discord. And if you're not part of the community already, by the way, subscribe to me on YouTube, join the Discord server linked in the description down below, and get involved. But I digress. We got hundreds of votes and people picked their favorite IEMs, and they also gave me reasons why they were their favorite IEMs. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about next. So basically in order, all right, we're going to go through the top 5 picks from the people. And the number 5 pick from the people is actually one of my nominees as well. That is the Dunu Brain Dance. A couple of quotes from the people. Here's one from Aftersound. He said, it's just got crazy resolution and sky-high treble extension without being harsh. That is a statement that I think is exactly right. I think that's exactly why this IEM is pretty fantastic. And I'm Your Huckleberry, he says it's got an exciting and technical signature when most of the market is changing the meta, and I think that is also a very good point. We kind of alluded to this new meta sound signature that's being ushered in by the Phoebos, etc. The Dunu, it kind of eschews that entirely. It just does, it sticks to doing its own thing, and it really does it fantastically. And that's why I guess it got one of my nominations, but also why it got 5th in terms of the People's Choice. The 4th People's Choice, you ready for this one? It's the Aful Explorer. There's actually a surprising amount of alignment between the People's Choice and my choices. This is actually pretty interesting. But the Aful Explorer, here's some things that the people had to say. Let's see, Pirate Poro 3084. He says it's got a dark tuning that is well done, especially for its price. I agree. And then eBoy AOA says it's got the smoothest laid back set I have been looking for a while now. Always wanted a dark set that I can crank the volume up without harshness or overpowering bass. And those are sentiments I totally get behind. This is just not that I am advising that you crank up the volume on anything you listen to. Protect your hearing, people. But if you're looking for something that just isn't harsh at all, but still does a very good job with the mid-range texturing and all that kind of that good separation technical stuff, the Aful Explorer really is pretty fantastic for its price especially. But that will not be the last. This is actually tied for 4th place with the Aful Explorer, is the The Audio Hype 4. So this was not on my nominees list, but it did get the People's Choice, 4th place for being fun bass and an overall all-rounder tuning. This is what Z-Rotor said about it. And then Thunder had to say, he said, I've tried some of the other well-reviewed or highly recommended IEMs that also came out this year, but none of them had the perfect combination of comfort and tuning that these have for me. And I think that's actually a really good point, and that this is just one of the most comfortable IEMs of the year. Really fantastic shell shape. And I mentioned it before, but man, comfort really does matter a lot when it comes to probably anything, but especially audio, just because of the way that we wear these things. They got to be comfortable. And the The Audio Hype 4, I agree, is one of the most comfortable IEMs of the year. That's going to make room now for the 2nd pick from the people, the number 2 pick, and that is this. Again, another overlap with my list, the Hisenior Mega5-EST. So too Mike said that it strikes a good balance between detail retrieval and warm, realistic vocals. And I think that's exactly right. I love the vocal presentation on this set. It really is just sounds super natural, fantastic timbre, and it still does a good job of giving you kind of that micro contrast in the mid-range. And then Zati Chechna says, best ones to keep as one pair, almost perfectly balanced and universal tuning with a little palatable coloration up top. Also, they're very comfortable fit-wise, and I agree on all points there. The Mega5-EST really is a pretty fantastic little set. But what is the number 1 pick from the peoples? Well, it's actually this, the Moondrop Dusk, and to be honest, I'm a little surprised. Because like I mentioned, there was a bit of controversy when this thing came out initially, and it wasn't just because of the DSP cable, because, you know, there's some controversy in whether or not the audiophile hobby is for an all analog signal, or does the audiophile hobby have room for DSP? I think that's part of the controversy. Part of it was also just the execution on the DSP cable with Moondrop software is a little bit on the iffy side. There's also some, I think, pretty unwarranted, that's the better word, unwarranted controversy around the QC of Moondrop's IEMs. But obviously that hasn't hampered the Dusk's performance in the people's eyes. People nominated it for their number 1. This is the overall People's Choice winner of 2024, and I think for good reason. Here's some quotes from the people. We've got one from Oscar Bow saying the bass is amazing. The mids are clean and warm, and the treble is crisp. The Dusk sounds perfect to me, and it also looks good. I agree with most of that, yeah. It is actually a fantastic looking set. Nelson Michael says, the default DSP tuning suits me, and I like the analog tuning as well, which I think is it's good to see people saying they're nominating it for both the DSP as well as the analog tuning. And some people just purely the DSP tuning, and some people just purely the analog listening. And then for Mind the Headphone, shout out Mind the Headphone. How you doing, man? It says, even though it's not cheap, it sounds incredible and is extremely versatile. It could easily be a definitive IEM. Agree with that as well. And then we've also got a quote here from Finch. He says, an easy recommendation, even without considering the DSP presets, which I find to be not as good as the analog tuning. So there's a vote for the analog tuning of this IEM. And then our final quote here is from Trunung saying, I love the sound signature, especially with the DSP tuning. Again, another vote for the DSP tuning. The design is also to my liking. And yeah, I agree. I really do like the aesthetic. I'm a sucker for a clear IEM where you can see all the drivers. And I think this actually made a nice improvement over the Blessing 3's all chrome fingerprinty plates by giving us this kind of like, I don't know, it's like a carbon fiber-ish plate. So there you go. All right, so you might now think that we are ready to dive into my Yearphone of the year, but we're not. I'm gonna stretch this out a little bit longer. I've got a couple more things that I wanted to announce. One is gonna be my favorite music of the year. All right, last year I didn't have a favorite album of the year, but there was a particular song by Cigarettes After Sex that came out that, oh, so good. So good. And I'll be honest, I've listened to that song a lot. It's called Stop Waiting. But this year is not about Stop Waiting and Cigarettes After Sex. This year is about not just a single song, but an entire album by Nilüfer Yanya. So if you're not familiar with Nilüfer Yanya, she's kind of like a, I don't know, indie pop out of the UK. And this album called My Method Actor, it is so, so good. And I really did kind of want to nail this down to one particular song so I can give you one song to walk away with and go listen to. But frankly, this entire album is so good and I can't really pick a favorite song from here. I mean, we've got the track Method Actor is fantastic. That was probably the first one I fell in love with. Binding is good. Mutations is fantastic if you're looking for just a lot of that audiophile ASMR in it, along with really nice vocals and a fun poppy beat. Ready for Sun is fantastic. Call It Love is fantastic. Made Out of Memory and Just a Western is a really fantastic track. So really just an awesome album that came out, I want to say in like September of this year. They slow dripped the individual track releases of this over the summer, and I ate them all up. A really just fantastic album front to back. If I had any criticism of it, it just might be that the songs aren't as differentiated as some other albums are, but I don't know. I think it just gives this like an overall cohesive vibe that kind of reminds me of The Cure's Disintegration. Not that this music sounds like The Cure, it really doesn't, but The Cure's Disintegration, again, it has like this nice cohesive sound where you could kind of mistake all of the songs for being the same as the previous, so it's like hard to even tell where one song ends and the other begins, but it does it with just a very different indie pop song sound that I really, really like. So yeah, check out, if you haven't already, Nilüfer Yanya's My Method Actor. Fantastic album. And you might think now we are ready to talk about my favorite IEM of the year, but we're not yet, because I also wanted to announce my favorite headphone of the year. And this was actually, I think, a really good year for headphones. You know, I have been traditionally reserving this show for IEM awards or just focused on IEMs, because that's mostly what I review, but more and more I'm reviewing a lot of headphones. And I think more and more, at least this year, this was like just the best year that I can remember for headphones in a very, very long time. The three kind of standouts for me were, like, there was the Dan Clark Audio E3, a closed back planar headphone. There was the Moondrop Cosmo, an open back planar headphone. And another one that, again, maybe I'm a little bit biased because it's made by my friend, but the Arbus Acoustic Sierra, which was, I think, the best of the 3D printed kind of independent builder headphones that I heard this year. But overall, my favorite headphone of 2024, does it fit on the screen? That kind of does. Here you go. It is the Dan Clark Audio E3. Just a fantastic, fantastic set. So this is a closed back planar. It's not cheap, $2,000 US, but you just get really fantastic vocal presentation. And again, I'm a sucker for a really excellent vocal presentation. Lots of nuance and micro contrast, nice stereo separation, and also a really nice subtle bass presentation here on the E3 that really just made this stand out for me. And not just like, you're probably used to hearing people say, people like me, it's pretty good for a closed back, because just open backs generally sound better. And this thing is pretty good for a closed back, but it's also pretty good for an open back. This is, I don't know, it maybe is too early for me to say something like this, but having had this on hand for about a year now, I don't know, I think this is like one of my top 3 headphones of all time. You've got the Sennheiser HD600, I've got the Odyssey MM500, and now I've got the Dan Clark Audio E3. Just a really, really fantastic set. But I think I'm out of reasons to delay this announcement. What is my favorite IEM of the year? I'm scrolling through my notes to see if there's anything else I need to tease you with, and I don't think that there is. So what is my overall favorite IEM of 2024? You ready? It's actually this. It's the Moondrop Dusk. That's the wrong button, but you get the gist. The Moondrop Dusk really is just the IEM that I spent the most time listening to this year, and for very, very good reason. It's just a very well-balanced sound signature that has got a very nice technical presentation. Is it the most technical on the table? Probably not. I would probably throw that to the Dunu Brain Dance. Is it the best, warmest tonality? No, I'd probably give that to the Hisenior Mega5-EST. But for the best overall balance, and also a really standout bass presentation, and also a fit that works really, really well for my ear, well, it's going to be it's going to be the Moondrop Dusk. Anything else to say about this? I mean, I really do think that this is an IEM that fits into, okay, earlier this year, I did a video talking about my 5 favorite IEMs and what it says about my biases. But really that kind of was me taking time to like think about what are my 5 favorite IEMs of the year, and kind of whittling it down to 5 is actually pretty hard. But this one, the Dusk, I would say is the one IEM of 2024 that has a place in my top 5. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of soul searching to figure out which one exactly gets kicked out for this, but there's a couple that come to mind that are, this is obviously a pick for me over those. So yeah, the Moondrop Cross Crinacle Dusk in its analog form. Again, I'm not listening to this with a DSP cable. You can if you want. Some people prefer it. I personally am very happy with it on the analog. I just generally prefer analog cables. That's why. That was, for me, enough to be my favorite IEM of 2024. But I guess that's enough for me. It was also the people's choice, which is actually, that's pretty interesting too. But I don't know, maybe you disagree. Maybe you're one of the people that voted differently. And I still want to hear from you. So leave your thoughts in the comments. What was your favorite IEM of the year, your favorite audio product? Just generally looking back at 2024, what stood out to you, and what are you hoping for 2025? I don't know. I don't have a really good sign off for this video other than to say thank you all for sticking with me and joining me for this past year. It's been a great year in audio, and hopefully you stick around for next year, and I will catch you on the next Super Review. Cheers.
Join with the force of reviews. We now have the tools to brave the misleading world of audio fools. Hey, this review is super, and so are you. Grab your headphones, sniff a graph, and share your thoughts in this pursuit. Let's begin with the theory.